7 years of marriage, a quiet Texas evening, and my wife walked in to tell me she was taking a trip with her ex. She set her phone on the table like a ticking bomb, wouldn't meet my eyes, and called it just business. In that moment, every manly instinct screamed at me to explode, to demand answers, to make a scene. Instead, I noticed the smirk she tried to hide, the way she waited for me to become the jealous husband she could blame later. That's when I decided to do the last thing she expected. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I said 2 words that ended our marriage and flipped the power in the room like a light switch. If you've ever wondered how calm can be louder than rage, stay with me. Because by the time this minute is over, you'll know exactly why those 2 words were the most dangerous thing I've ever said. To her. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm 38, a project manager in Houston, and I thought I understood what a steady life felt like. 7 years of marriage teaches you rhythms. Garbage day is Tuesday, her show on Thursdays, lawn on Saturdays. We split the mortgage, argued about paint colors, and sent birthday cards on time. Nothing flashy, just the kind of life most men my age recognize. Work, bills, a warm meal, a familiar laugh. I believed trust was like the roof over our heads. You don't notice it until it leaks. Friends joked that we were boring in a good way. I took that as a compliment. I wasn't searching for fireworks. I wanted fairness, loyalty, and a little peace at the end of a long day. Looking back, that calm felt earned, until it didn't. Because the night it all cracked open, I realized how quickly "we're fine" can turn into "how did I miss this?" And once you hear certain words, you cannot unhear them. It was a regular suburban evening, the kind you barely remember. Leftover brisket, green beans, a beer sweating on a coaster. The Astros murmured from a muted TV in the other room. Our kitchen had that warm, granite glow only homeowners know, a little pride every time the under-cabinet lights clicked on. Jessica rinsed plates while I skimmed emails. The dishwasher door sighed shut. Small sounds, ordinary and safe. Then I noticed her phone face down, not buzzing like usual. She kept glancing at it as if it might bite. When she sat across from me, the chair scraped too loud. Her fingers drummed the table, then froze. Eye contact didn't land. It slid off me like rain off a windshield. You learn to read the weather in a home. That night, the air shifted. The house still looked the same, but some piece of the foundation felt loose, like a board underfoot that suddenly gives. I didn't know it yet, but we were standing on it. The truth is, the slide starts long before the fall. A few weeks earlier, little things tugged at my attention. Pilates classes that ran late. Work drinks on weeknights that came with a new perfume I couldn't name. Laughter that didn't include me. She started flipping her phone over at dinner. Notifications stopped lighting the screen. Our goodnight kisses turned into quick pecks. When I asked how her day went, I got weather reports. Busy. Fine. Later. Most men over 30 know that feeling. The quiet distance that enters a room first and takes a seat at your table. You tell yourself not to be dramatic. You've paid enough bills and changed enough tires to know relationships have seasons. But one Thursday, I reached for her phone by mistake, thinking it was mine. She flinched like I'd grabbed a live wire. The look on her face disappeared just as fast, smoothed over by a practiced smile. That was the first time I heard the floor creak. We were clearing the table when she said it, casual as a weather update. I need to travel for a few days. With Ryan. The fork in my hand paused over the sink. Ryan. The name hit the tile like dropped silver. I knew who he was because every husband learns the old map. The ex you've heard about, just enough to understand the terrain and avoid the cliffs. Jessica didn't look at me. She stared at the faucet as if the water could answer for her. It's work, she added, still watching the stream. He has connections. It'll help. The room went quiet in the real way, where appliances hum but sound doesn't reach you. I said his name once, steady, to make sure I'd heard right. Ryan? She nodded, small and quick, like she was agreeing with herself. There are moments when the past walks right through your front door. This was one of them, and once it's inside, it starts measuring the place. The first feeling wasn't anger. It was shock, pure and bright, like stepping outside into cold air you didn't expect. My chest tightened, my stomach dropped. If you've ever been told bad news in a hospital hallway, you know how the world narrows to the voice in front of you, and the thud of your own heartbeat. Part of me wanted to raise my voice, to question everything, to pace the floor and demand sense. But another part, the older, quieter part that's paid late fees and shut off a leaky valve at midnight, knew that noise doesn't fix leaks. I put the fork down. I steadied my breathing. I looked at my wife and chose a simple question over a speech. Why? Not the kind of why that begs, the kind that asks for a receipt. She glanced up, then away. Somewhere between her eyes and her mouth, the answer changed shape. And in that space, I felt something in me harden to steel. While she gathered words, I did the math no man wants to do. 7 years of inside jokes, road trips, and tax returns. Birthdays remembered, flu seasons nursed, paychecks stretched. Trust is built in 1,000 small deposits. It can be drained in a single withdrawal. I thought about vows, not as poetry but as policy, not romantic, practical. The agreement that when storms hit, you don't invite a former weatherman to ride shotgun. Maybe that sounds old-fashioned, but ask any man who's moved a couch down 3 flights of stairs for a friend. You either have someone who lifts with you, or you don't. A trip with your ex, I said in my head, isn't a business plan, it's a boundary test. I knew how this story gets spun. Jealous husband, insecure man, controlling. But there's a line between trust and disrespect, and I could feel her toe on it. I decided, right then, I wouldn't be the one to cross it. Her voice smoothed out like a sales call. It's strictly professional. He knows investors. We'll be in meetings all day. You have nothing to worry about. She dropped corporate words like sandbags, networking, opportunity, growth. She offered a schedule with times and hotel names, the kind of detail meant to look solid from a distance. But seasoned men know the difference between a blueprint and a brochure. None of it acknowledged the simple truth. You don't take a match into a dry field and call it rain. I said nothing and watched how she watched me. She needed a scene, a raised voice, a slammed door to turn the conversation into Michael's temper. My silence made the pitch fall flat. And in that silence, I saw it. Not carelessness, but confidence. She believed she could drag the boundary line, and I'd thank her for the favor. That belief didn't bruise, it burned. And once you feel that burn, you don't forget where it started. There's a look people have when they think they're holding the cards. It's not a smile. It's a readiness, like a runner in the blocks. Jessica had it. Answers came too fast, like they were laminated in her pocket. She pre-forgave herself with phrases I'd never heard from her before. My growth, my independence, as if respecting me meant restricting her. I'm not threatened by ambition. I've worked double shifts and cheered for promotions that weren't mine, but respect isn't a cage. It's a promise. Her eyes kept scanning my face, waiting for the explosion that would make me the villain in the story she was writing. And then I caught the smallest tell, a half-breath before she said, "Trust me," like a poker player glancing at the chips. That's when I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a dare. She wasn't asking for trust. She was testing leverage. Men my age know a test when we see one. I refused to take it. Silence can be a shelter or a weapon. That night, it became both. I leaned back, folded my hands, and let the kitchen sounds come back into focus. The fridge hum, the clock tick, the water in the pipes settling. Jessica shifted in her chair. Without a fight to push against, she lost her balance. She asked if I was mad. I let the question float by. She asked if I loved her. I looked at her, not through her. There's a point where a man decides what kind of man he is. Not in the gym, not at the bar, at his own kitchen table with the person who promised to guard him and didn't. The urge to shout was there, bright and hot, but it passed. In its place, a colder clarity took root. I knew the next words I spoke would define the rest of this story. I chose them carefully, like a man cuts a wire, and then I said them. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't pace. I set the fork down, squared my shoulders, and asked one word that means more than a dozen speeches. Why? Not why me, not why would you, just the kind of why that asks for proof, not poetry. Older men know this move. Keep your pulse steady and let the other person paint the picture. I watched her jaw work while she searched for the best version of her answer. The house seemed to press in closer, waiting with me. I've replaced water heaters and patched roofs. You learn to test before you tear anything apart. Why is a test. If the truth is solid, it stands. If it isn't, it leaks. She looked at the faucet like it owed her a line. Because it's work, she finally said. The words landed light, but the echo was heavy. In that moment, I knew the conversation wasn't about travel. It was about respect, and whether it still lived here. Jessica's voice shifted into something smooth, like she'd practiced this in the car. It's a short trip, meetings. Investors, he knows the right rooms. She listed hotels, flight numbers, even a dinner reservation that sounded like it came with a disclaimer. Men my age have sat through enough webinars to recognize a pitch. It had all the right headings, none of the right heart. She said opportunity as if it were a safety word. She promised separate rooms like a guarantee on a toaster. She layered in phrases that make arguments sound responsible. Career traction, market access, timing. But the more professional it sounded, the less personal it felt. I didn't interrupt. Salespeople fill silence with features. Buyers listen for the cost. Behind her bullet points, I heard the bill. Not in dollars, in trust. She wanted me to nod along like a sponsor, but a husband isn't a silent investor. By the time she finished, I could see who the audience was supposed to be. Me. Then it clicked. The deck wasn't designed to convince me. It was designed to provoke me. If I snapped, the headline would write itself. Jealous husband, controlling man, insecure. Older guys know that move. We've walked out of enough baited arguments to recognize the cheese on the spring. She watched my hands more than my eyes, waiting for the tell. A fist, a sigh, a sudden push from the table. I kept my breathing even. I pictured a pressure gauge, needle hovering in the yellow, not the red. She needed a scene. A scene gives cover. Drama turns boundaries into overreactions. It recasts disrespect as empowerment and makes the person holding the line look like the problem. Once I understood that, I knew my only job was to refuse the role. I had one play. Don't feed the frame. That meant steady voice, steady posture, and a silence she couldn't spin. If there was a trap here, it wouldn't be snapping on me. There's a version of manhood you learn in garages and job sites. Lift with your legs, measure twice, keep your temper. You don't throw wrenches. You don't shout at drywall. You fix the thing that's broken, or you walk away from the thing you can't fix. That's the quiet I chose. I'm not 25 anymore. I've had bosses chew me out and customers blame me for storms I didn't cause. You survive those days by mastering the pause. At home, the same rule applies. When someone invites you to play the fool, you don't audition. I let her words float, examine them like a carpenter checks a stud, plumb or not. The beam didn't line up. I felt the old heat rise in my chest, then pass like weather. Calm isn't weakness, it's a tool. The more I used it, the clearer everything looked. If she expected fireworks, she'd have to bring her own matches. My hands stayed open, my eyes stayed level. Go on, I said, and that was all. Then I closed my mouth and let the clock do its work. Older men know the power of space. When you stop crowding a story, it shows its seams. She rushed to fill the air, agendas, call sheets, a mention of a mutual friend who totally understands. She tried to convert me with borrowed names. It felt like a reference check without the references. I nodded once to show I was listening, not agreeing. She circled back to trust, the way people do when the foundation shakes. The longer she talked, the farther we got from us. Nothing about how this would feel, nothing about why it had to be him. Just efficiency, convenience, leverage. I pictured the two of them in an airport bar, laughing about how grown up they were, and I pictured myself at home, told to applaud. Silence stripped the paint off that image. Underneath, the wood wasn't solid. It was swollen, split, already failing. Her eyes scanned my face like headlights sliding across a fence line. She wasn't listening anymore. She was measuring. Every pause, every breath, every blink counted and filed as evidence. Say something, she pushed. But what she meant was, say the wrong thing. Men in their 30s through 60s know that cross-exam feeling, how a simple conversation becomes a courtroom. You learn not to volunteer exhibits. I kept my answers small. I hear you. I understand what you're saying. Both true, neither surrender. She leaned forward, fishing for a spark. I leaned back, letting the chair take my weight. The more I stayed still, the more she fidgeted, like a driver tapping the gas on ice and going nowhere. Her voice brightened, then sharpened, then softened again, trying keys in a lock that wasn't stuck. It was changed. That's when I realized I hadn't lost power. I'd just stopped handing it over. The room felt different. So did I. When she finally ran out of angles, I gave her the smallest response I had left. A single nod. Not approval. A receipt. I heard you. That nod was a line in the sand men understand. A contractor's signature that says, I've inspected the site. Her face faltered. She expected a verdict, not a record. The nod told her the project didn't pass. I kept my jaw relaxed, my hands flat on the table, the way you keep a pickup steady with a trailer in crosswind. She tried to rehearse the pitch again, slower, as if clarity would redeem content. I didn't interrupt. The nod stood. It was the opposite of begging. It was choosing. Choosing to be the man who can carry weight without bending into shapes he can't respect later. The air between us tightened. Somewhere in that quiet, I felt the decision in me take root. I wasn't there to negotiate terms. I was there to decide who I was going to be. Silence settled, then deepened. The hum of the fridge sounded like it was coming from another room. Even the clock hesitated. I've felt that hush once before, in a hospital waiting area when the doctor steps away to check charts. Everyone breathes, but not enough. That's what the kitchen became, a room where the oxygen turned expensive. Jessica shifted in her seat. She tried a laugh that died halfway. "You're being dramatic," she said, accusing me of the very thing she couldn't make happen. The more I refused the script, the more the script crumpled. I stared at the grain in the table, the scratches we'd made moving in, a map of ordinary days. Funny how the ordinary can look like treasure when you realize somebody's pawning it. I lifted my eyes again and let the quiet do the talking. The message was simple, and it finally reached her. We weren't arguing about a trip. We were standing on the edge of a cliff. My mind walked our timeline. The cheap couch we bought used. The AC that died in July and had me sweating through a Saturday to install a new unit. The flu where I slept on the floor to keep her comfortable. Holidays divided, miles driven, compromises made. Marriage isn't magic, it's maintenance. You change the oil before the engine seizes. You fix leaks before the drywall sags. Somewhere along the way, I started treating vows like that, habits that keep the house standing. And yet, here we were, wedging a crowbar into the doorframe and pretending it was just a tune-up. I thought about the first time she told me she felt safe with me. Safety isn't an emotion, it's a promise. If I let this slide, I'd be promising the opposite. That realization landed like a weight in my palm. It didn't crush me. It steadied me. When a man knows what he can't live with, he finally knows how to live. Once the decision's set, the next step became simple. Not easy, simple. I pictured two roads, one where I debate into the night and wake up smaller, and one where I make a clean, quiet choice. I chose the second. I would not throw plates or speeches. I would not audition for the villain. I would not let anger write checks my dignity has to cash. I would end the scene with a sentence she couldn't twist. I felt it form on my tongue, two words sharp as a box cutter, clean as a signature. Before I spoke, I took inventory. Posture straight, voice low, eyes steady. Older men know that delivery matters. You can say the right thing the wrong way and lose the truth of it. I waited until she looked at me, really looked. Then I drew the line I could live with. The moment held like a held breath. I opened my mouth, and with full control, I cut the cord. I let the quiet run its course, then chose the cleanest cut a man can make. Don't worry. 2 words, steady and low, like setting a heavy box down without a thud. Not comfort. Closure. I've used that tone in boardrooms and service counters. Final, not rude. It means the negotiation's over. I saw the effect wash across her face. She expected heat, not frost. She expected debate, not decision. Older men understand this move. When you remove the argument, you remove the fuel. The clock ticked twice. I didn't blink. Those words carried a message most guys my age have said at least once in their heads. I'm not here to supervise your choices. I'm here to choose mine. I didn't explain, defend, or decorate. I gave her a finish line where she wanted a racetrack. That's the moment the ground tilted. A simple sentence turned the kitchen from a courtroom into a closing. And once it's a closing, paperwork comes next. Jessica blinked like someone had flipped a light on in a dark room. Her mouth opened, then shut, the way you do when a waiter sets down the wrong plate and calls it yours. She'd brought ingredients for a fight, accusations to saute, a little guilt to garnish, and discovered I wasn't eating. "Don't worry," she said, not a question yet, more like a misprint. She checked my hands for tremors and found none. The calm unnerved her more than any slammed door could. Older folks know that look. We've given bad news and watched the other person realize the tone means the outcome won't change. She searched my face for a rescue rope and found only level ground. That's when her shoulders lost an inch of height. "You're not upset?" Her voice wavered on the last word. I didn't fix it for her. I let the silence do what truth does, settle like dust on an empty shelf, making the emptiness visible. "Don't worry?" This time it came out as a question, thinner, edged with a shake. She wanted me to clarify, to soften the edges, to turn it into reassurance. But older men learn that clarity doesn't live in extra words. It lives in the weight of the ones you keep. I met her eyes and let the meaning stand. Not a pat on the head, a boundary line. She waited for the usual follow-up. "I trust you. We'll talk it through. Let's not overreact." It didn't arrive. The echo did the work instead, bouncing around the kitchen until it returned to her as a verdict. I could feel her recalculating, like a driver who realizes the GPS has lost signal and the next turn is on her. "You mean," she started, then trailed off. That was the climax of the minute. The moment she understood "don't worry" wasn't a blanket. It was a mirror. And what it reflected back wasn't fear. It was finality. I rotated the laptop toward me and tapped the trackpad. The screen woke up with a calm blue glow. Email threads, calendar blocks. Tuesday looked busy. That small, ordinary click landed like a gavel. Men in their 30s through 60s know the move. When talk turns circular, return to the work you control. You repair what's yours to repair. You release what isn't. I scrolled through a client message, starred a line, and wrote a crisp reply. No huff, no performance. Just a man at his table, doing his job. The hum of the fridge came back. The world resumed its regular speed, except in the chair across from me. I could feel her confusion in the air, the way a room feels after the power flickers. Lights on, but everyone's still blinking. "Michael?" she tried, like saying my name might rewind the tape. I typed a final period and sent the email. That little whoosh sounded like a door closing. She stood, sat, then stood again, hands worrying the edge of her phone case. "You're being ridiculous," she said. Then, "You're being calm to upset me." Then, "Are you serious?" Older adults recognize scramble talk. When a person cycles settings on a broken remote, I didn't rise to any of it. She offered the itinerary again, now with a brighter tone, as if volume could fix the content. "I'll send you everything." She wanted me to chase, to cross-examine hotels and gate numbers, to take the bait and turn the topic from respect to logistics. I let the net drop and watched the water go smooth. Her confidence thinned. She sat back down, elbows on the table, like she'd lost her place in a script. The climax arrived quietly, the moment she realized the pace of this conversation no longer belonged to her. Control isn't always seized. Sometimes it's surrendered by the person who runs out of moves. The questions shifted. "Are you okay? Do you care? Does this bother you at all?" It wasn't strategy anymore. It was search. Men my age have felt that reversal in business meetings and doctor visits, the instant the other side needs something you can't hand over. She wanted a promise I no longer issued. Reassurance without respect. I wasn't cruel. I was careful. I kept my voice even, because older men know anger writes checks dignity has to cash. "You're asking me to believe in something that doesn't believe in me," I said, just once. No echo needed. She blinked hard, like clearing a windshield in sudden rain. "So you don't trust me?" That was the pivot point. Not the mind-reading kind, the practical kind. Trust is a bridge you maintain. If you park a truck on it you said you wouldn't, the bridge speaks for itself. The climax was simple clarity. She needed comfort. I needed truth. Only one arrived. Do you even love me? It landed soft, but heavy, like a box marked fragile that's already cracked. This is where many men over 30 feel the tug, to prove love by ignoring the terms that make love possible. I didn't take that road. I've learned that love without respect is a roof without beams. It looks like shelter until the first storm. I didn't deliver a speech. I let a breath pass, the way you do before signing something that matters. I love what we promised each other, I said. I won't love what breaks it. No flourish, just a line I could live with tomorrow morning. Her eyes shined, anger and fear mixing into a color I couldn't name. The climax came in the silence after that sentence, where both of us heard the subtext. I won't compete with a past you're inviting into our present. Some choices aren't between good and bad. They're between true and easy. I felt the corners of my mouth lift, not joy, not spite, the half-smile men wear at the DMV and tire shop when the answer is what it is, a calm acceptance of reality's edges. She misread it as smugness and sat up straighter, ready for round two. I didn't give her one. I closed the laptop halfway and rested my hands on it, like a man on a fence he built himself. So that's it? She pushed. That's it, I said, voice level. My smile faded into neutral. That expression, solid, unhurried, has gotten me through layoffs and leak repairs. It signals you won't be chased down a hallway of hypotheticals. She tried the softer route, reaching for my wrist. I didn't pull away, but I didn't fold toward her either. The climax of this minute wasn't the smile. It was the steadiness behind it, the kind that tells both people the weather has changed and the forecast isn't bluffing. Tension seeped into the drywall. The TV stayed muted. The porch light flicked on by timer, throwing a pale strip across the floor. Every married couple knows rooms memorize arguments. They keep echoes. Ours recorded the quiet instead. Jessica's chair creaked. A neighbor's truck rumbled by. I tracked the sound like a metronome and kept my posture set. She tested new angles. We can set rules. We'll FaceTime. It's only 2 nights. Logistics again. Window dressing on a missing wall. I pictured our first grocery run, how we laughed at buying 2 different ketchup brands and decided on one. Small decisions that say, we're on the same team. This wasn't ketchup. This was choosing a different team and asking me to wave from the bleachers. The climax came when I said nothing and still said no. The house seemed to understand. It held its breath with me. And in that held breath we both heard the crack run all the way through. She saw it then. The game she thought she was running had flipped. Power didn't sit in the loudest voice. It sat in the clearest boundary. Her confidence thinned to questions. Are you leaving? Are we okay? Say something, please. I remembered the men I know who learned the hard way that begging keeps a broken thing breaking. I wouldn't be another one. I lifted the laptop, stood, and pushed the chair in, a small, respectful act that sounded final. Michael, talk to me, she whispered, fear finally louder than her plan. That was the climax, the tremor in her voice when she realized she couldn't steer me with chaos. I set the computer on the counter and looked at the stack of mail, the utility bill on top. Ordinary life, asking to be protected. I've said enough, I answered. Not cold, clear. The roles had reversed, not by force, but by refusal. And once a man finds that refusal, he doesn't misplace it. That night, the house settled, but she didn't. Jessica shifted under the covers, then threw them off, then pulled them back again. The ceiling fan clicked once every rotation, a tiny metronome for nerves. Her phone lit the room with short flashes, then went face down. I lay on my side, breathing even, staring at the outline of the dresser and the framed wedding photo in the dark. Older men know this drill. After hard news, you choose your rhythm or the night chooses it for you. I kept mine. No sighs, no tossing, no speeches carried into midnight where they grow teeth. She turned toward me, waiting for anger to show up like a late guest. It didn't. Calm isn't sleep, but it's close enough to rest a backbone. I reached over, clicked the lamp off, and let the quiet be what it was. The climax was simple. She learned I wasn't going to break tonight. Morning would come, and I'd still be whole. Jessica tried the side door, the one labeled small talk. Did you see that email from your boss? My mom called. We should check the sprinklers. I opened my laptop, the glow low, and worked through a short stack of messages. Pay stub, client update, calendar block for Thursday. Ordinary lines that anchor a man when a storm rolls in. I answered each politely, no frills, like tightening bolts until the rattle stops. She floated closer. We can set boundaries, daily check-ins. I kept my eyes on the screen, finished a sentence, hit send. Not tonight, I said. Measured, not mean. It wasn't avoidance, it was triage. Men past 30 know the rule. Don't argue circles with an empty tank. She wanted me refueled with drama. I chose the quiet kind. The climax arrived with a small sound, the laptop closing. It told the room the conversation wasn't a spinning plate anymore. It was a box, and I had decided what fits. There's a silence you pick up over years. Garages, job sites, early mornings with coffee no one else wants. It's the quiet that comes after a torque wrench slips or a breaker trips. You don't yell at the tool, you reset, remeasure, and try again, or you stop before you strip the bolt. That's the silence I carried. Guys my age recognize it. Holding your tongue isn't fear, it's control. I remembered waiting out a fishing knot with my dad, how patience saved the line. Same thing here. Words wouldn't untangle this. Boundaries might. Jessica mistook my stillness for indifference. It wasn't. It was the opposite. Attention without surrender. I felt my heart slow to a workable beat, something you can count on. The climax was a decision you don't hear so much as feel. I would let my actions speak in plain English. No grandstand, no tantrum. A measured response that even a bad faith listener can't flip on its head. She tested the locks. So you're okay with this? Are you mad? Say something real. Her voice changed gears the way a driver does on a steep hill, higher, lower, searching. I answered with the kind of small sentences men keep for bank tellers and doctors. I heard you. I understand. I'm thinking. Clear, honest, and impossible to misquote. It wasn't passive. It was precise. Older adults know the value of precision. Say less, mean more. The more she pushed, the more the questions exposed themselves. They weren't about travel. They were about control. She wanted a version of me she could argue into shape, the loud one. I let that version stay unemployed. The climax came when she finally paused and looked at me like a person who realizes the steering wheel isn't connected. The wheels were turning, but the car wasn't moving. I didn't smile. I just let the truth idle, loud enough to hear. I stood, rinsed the plates, and loaded the dishwasher. Routines are rails. They keep the train on track. The sink hissed. The silverware rattled. I wiped the counter with slow circles you learn after decades of messes. Oil spills, paint drips, coffee rings. She hovered near the island like a referee searching for a foul. This reaction is manipulative, she tried, reaching for a flag that wasn't there. I didn't argue philosophies. I took the trash out. The cool air in the garage hit my face, steadying as a good handshake. Men in their 30s through 60s know this trick. Do one useful thing when everything else wants a scene. I came back in, washed my hands, and folded the towel over the oven handle. The climax was the smallest click, the trash can lid sealing. It sounded like a boundary closing, because it was. She wanted sparks. All she got was a man choosing not to burn his own house. The house turned into a chessboard made of carpet and tile. She parked in the doorway, then the hallway, then the kitchen threshold, guarding squares that only she could see. I moved like a man who knows his route. Table, sink, desk, bedroom. No stomps, no theatrics, just placement. Silent wars look silly from the outside, but anyone who's lived through one knows the weight they carry. It's who yields space, who holds it. She threw a comment over her shoulder. You're being cruel, then waited to see where it landed. I let it drop past me and disappear. The rooms recorded everything, the way stairs creak when someone wants to be heard without saying it. The climax arrived in a decision. I would not sleep in arguments. I turned the bed down on my side, set my phone to Do Not Disturb, and left my wedding band on the nightstand. Not a threat, a marker. So if morning came hard, I'd remember why. She cried then. Not performative at first, but real, the kind that climbs into your throat if you've ever loved the person across from you. I got her tissues and a glass of water, the way you'd help anyone in distress, kindness without contract. I stood nearby, not hovering. Men with some years on them understand. Comfort isn't compliance. I don't want to hurt you, she said. And there it was, the paradox. She had already set the hurt in motion. I didn't debate it. I let the truth sit. She reached for my hand. I let her hold it, palm to palm, for one slow breath. Then I stepped back. The climax was that step, the smallest space that says, I feel for you, but I won't walk into the fire with you. The tears slowed. The room cooled. Weather passes, even the bad kind. What stays is the landscape it leaves. Ours had a new hill in it, and we both could see it. Lying in the dark, I did the math again, but this time like a ledger. Miles driven for family holidays, sick days used for her recovery, projects I turned down so we could save for a down payment, nights she stood by me when work beat me up. I gave those their due. A fair accounting includes the deposits, but then the withdrawals, the flinches, the phone face down, the old name walking back into our life with a suitcase and a smile. I pictured myself 10 years from now, teaching a younger man the difference between patience and surrender. If you don't protect respect, I'd say, you're just paying for problems you didn't order. The climax was a sentence I formed in my head, clear as a notarized line. I can forgive many things. I do not fund my own replacement. Once I wrote it there, the rest of the page organized itself. The numbers didn't lie. Neither would I. By midnight, the shock had cooled into something stronger than anger and lighter than hate. Steel, not stone. Firm, but workable. Older men know that feel from a good tool. It holds an edge without cutting your hand. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was restoring order. I pictured my father's rule about fences. Build them straight and they won't sag from weather. Mine had leaned too long under be reasonable. I straightened it. The climax was a quiet vow I made to myself. Less wedding day, more oath at a workbench. I will not trade my self-respect for anyone's convenience. I repeated it once, out loud, to hear it in my own voice. It didn't echo. It landed. After that, my breathing changed. Deeper. Slower. Decisions made inside a man show up in the simple parts first. Posture, pulse, the way your shoulders finally sit where they belong. Morning would test it. I already knew how I'd answer. I got up before dawn and moved like a man on a job he understands. I checked the bank app, confirmed the balance, and took pictures of a few important documents. Titles, insurance, the mortgage statement. I pulled a duffel from the closet. Jeans, boots, shave kit, a couple of work shirts. Nothing dramatic. Practical. I slid a file from the desk, the kind you keep for someday and hope you never use. Templates, contacts, a checklist a lawyer friend once sent, just in case. I didn't print anything yet. I stacked what I'd need beside my keys. If she asked later, I wanted the facts clean. The climax came with a small alarm I set for early morning and a sticky note I placed under a pen on the counter. It wasn't a threat. It was a plan. When the shower started upstairs, the road in my head unrolled. One clean exit, one firm note, one man walking with his head high. At first light, Jessica gathered a robe and her phone and walked to the bathroom. The door clicked shut. The shower hissed to life. Steam curled under the gap like a timer I could see. That sound told me everything I needed. I had a window and a choice. Men my age know the rhythm of morning. Coffee, keys, commute. I swapped it for a different list, one I'd been writing in my head all night. I stood a second longer, listening to the water drum the tile. No anger rose, just resolve, settled and workable, like a tool in your palm that finally fits. I opened the closet without hurry and pulled down the duffel. The zipper tab tapped the fabric as if asking, "We doing this?" Yes. The house felt awake in a new way, alert but not frantic. I laid the bag on the bed, smoothed the wrinkles, and took a breath I'd been holding for months. The bathroom fan hummed. So did I. I packed the way a man packs for a job he understands. Clean socks rolled tight, 2 pairs of jeans, 3 shirts that work anywhere, a spare belt, the boots that don't quit, shave kit, small bottle of cologne, chargers coiled and clipped. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. Practical things that don't argue. Every item had a reason. I added a sweatshirt for the chill you get when decisions finally land. In the nightstand, I found a spare money clip I hadn't used since we closed on the house. It felt right in my hand, simple, honest. I chose the navy duffel because the zipper never snags. Small choices, but they steadied me. A man feels the difference between running away and walking out. This was walking out. I zipped the main pocket halfway and left space for documents. The click of the zipper teeth sounded like a line knitting itself closed. Behind the bathroom door, water still ran. I still had time. More importantly, I had direction. I moved to the desk. Folder. Notepad. The small fireproof envelope with passports and titles because adults learn you grab originals when the ground shifts. Maybe I wouldn't need them today, but future me deserved options. I slid my driver's license from the tray just to check it, then put it back. A flash drive with tax returns, insurance cards, a copy of our marriage certificate I'd filed just in case, back when just in case felt imaginary. I tucked the envelope into the duffel, snug against the side panel so it wouldn't bend. Wallet, keys, phone. Habit had me pat all 3, the old triple tap every man knows. I looked once at the framed photo of us on the desk, sour light from the window washing it pale. I didn't turn it down. I didn't need to punish the past to protect the present. The zipper closed with a clean line. That was the climax. The bag no longer open to debate. Neither was I. I woke the printer and watched it blink from sleep to ready, the way a dog lifts its head when it hears your boots. The forms I'd prepped months ago sat in a folder labeled with a date I'd hoped never to use. I filled what I could, name, address, the blanks that say, "We tried." I signed where it made sense to sign, left space where it required both hands. The pen felt heavier than usual, like it knew it was drafting a new map. I carried the stack to the kitchen. Our granite counter, warm and familiar under the pendant light, looked like a stage for ordinary life. Mail, a fruit bowl, the coffee maker. I cleared a square and laid the papers flat, smoothing the edges the way you square lumber before a cut. The printer's faint warmth still clung to the pages. The house was quiet except for running water upstairs. The paperwork wasn't theater. It was direction you can touch. I pulled a sticky note from the drawer, the yellow kind that never quite sticks unless you press the corners. 2 words, then 2 more. Don't worry, I'm done. I wrote them slow, no flourish. The first sentence held the calm. The second carried the truth. I set the note on top of the stack, then pressed each corner until it gripped the granite. Men who've left instructions for a dog sitter or a neighbor watering plants know the feeling. You make things clear because you care what happens next, even if you won't be there to explain. I added my spare house key beside the papers, the metal catching the morning light. That was the minute's climax. Not a bang, an arrangement. A small, still life of endings. Signatures, a key, a sentence you only say when you've already done the hardest part. Upstairs, the shower cut off. Water pattered in the pipes. The clock in the hall ticked once, sounding louder than before. I shouldered the duffel and felt its honest weight. No wobble, no strain. Just enough to remind me I was carrying something I chose. The front door latch clicked soft, a private sound between a man and his house. Dawn laid a thin gold line along the walkway. The air held that early cool Texas gives you right before the heat shows up. I locked the deadbolt from outside and slipped the key onto the stack through the mail slot. A quiet slide and a soft clink on granite. In the driveway, my truck waited like a friend who doesn't ask questions. I set the bag on the passenger seat and started the engine. No roar, just a steady hum. Leaving isn't heroic, it's a skill. You keep your shoulders down, your eyes level, and your mouth closed unless the words matter. I eased into reverse, paused at the curb, and looked both ways. The climax was small. I shifted into drive. Forward meant forward. The bathroom door opened as I reached the corner. I didn't see her, but I could picture the scene because I'd lived in that kitchen for 7 years. The quick pad of bare feet, the pause at the counter, the rustle of paper lifted, then the inhale that forgets how to exhale. My phone buzzed once in the console, messages piling already, little banners announcing shock. I didn't read them. The light turned green. Men in our 40s and 50s know this split screen. One part of your life reacting behind you while the part in front of you asks for simple things. Turn the wheel, check your mirrors, join traffic. I let the present win. In my mind, I could see her eyes track the note, the key, the clean stack. No argument written, no loophole offered. The climax wasn't her gasp. It was my hands steady at 10 and 2, obeying signs I finally chose. Yield to truth, then proceed. Her name flashed across my screen. Then again. Then a text bubble that stretched, collapsed, stretched. I know that rhythm, the scramble for the perfect sentence to rewind the tape. Please pick up. We need to talk. Don't do anything drastic. A voicemail pinged. I let it sit. Older adults understand. You don't negotiate heavy choices while adrenaline's still in the bloodstream. A second call came through marked Mom. I declined it gently, the way you set a fragile box down. The truck's cabin felt like a small church. Seatbelt snug, AC whispering, morning radio low. I thought of men I'd watched falter at this moment and turn back for one more round of the same fight. Compassion for them, a clear no for me. The climax was a decision with no trumpet. I toggled do not disturb and let the road quiet the noise. Not punishment, protection, for both of us. Some sentences are too important to edit in transit. I took the long road out of the neighborhood, the one that passes the park where we used to walk after dinner. The swings hung still. I adjusted the mirror, not to check the house, but to take the sun out of my eyes. There's a difference. Men learn it the same way we learn torque, by stripping a few bolts first. I caught my reflection for a second, older than I felt yesterday, steadier than I looked last year. A text preview slid onto the screen. We can fix this if... I let it fade. The truck rolled past the gas station, the church sign with a new verse, the diner with the same neon pie. Familiar things, still standing. I didn't speed. I didn't crawl. I kept pace with the truth. The climax came at a stop sign I'd blown before when rushing to please. This time I stopped fully, counted to 3, and turned left. Not away from something. Toward myself. A mile out, the knot in my chest loosened, not with joy, but with alignment. Relief isn't a party. It's a level surface after a long tilt. The sun climbed and the cab warmed. I cracked the window to let in a thread of morning air. I thought about the word revenge and how small it looked next to respect. I wasn't getting even. I was getting honest. Men in our 30s to 60s know this payoff. Not fireworks, but the clean click when a door you built finally fits its frame. My phone stayed dark. My shoulders sat where they belonged. I reached for the coffee in the cup holder, took a careful sip, and didn't burn my tongue. The lesson felt that simple. I didn't win a fight. I ended one. The climax was a sentence I could say out loud without flinching. I left with nothing that wasn't mine, and with everything I needed to be myself again. My phone lit up before I cleared the feeder road. Jessica called once, then again, then kept calling until the missed call list looked like a barcode. I let the ringtone finish every time. Letting it ring wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. Older men know that answering in the first hour guarantees a fight, not a solution. I turned the radio down so I could hear my own breathing. The truck's tires hummed a steady line beneath me, mile after mile. A voicemail notification stacked, then another. She tried FaceTime. I watched the screen strobe with her name and set it face down on the seat. The urge to pick up came in waves, like muscle memory reaching for a wrench. I kept both hands on the wheel. The climax arrived simple as a sentence. I chose not to be coached back into chaos. The phone finally went quiet. The road did what the house couldn't. Give me room to think. At last. Texts replaced the calls. A paragraph, then a screenful, then 3 more. She wrote in bursts, apologizing, explaining, promising rules she never honored when it mattered. She said I'd misunderstood, that Ryan was safe, that I was safe, that we were safe. Words like safety swell when respect is missing. They float, then sink. She asked where I was headed, begged me to talk before I made a mistake. She typed my name 3 times in a row. She sent a selfie with red eyes like proof. Older men have seen this turn. The shift from certainty to negotiation, then to pleading when certainty won't return. I read each line at a stoplight, then set the phone down again. A longer message arrived, something about therapy, boundaries, calling her sister. The climax landed between 2 bubbles, a simple realization that none of it mentioned ending the trip. She wanted my comfort without changing her plan. That mismatch did the deciding. Today. I pulled into a grocery lot and parked where the shade would last. I scrolled through everything she'd sent, not hunting for holes, just listening to the pattern. It sounded like a fire alarm stuck between on and off. I could reply, I could ask questions, I could set terms. Men my age have done that dance and discovered it leads back to the same crowded kitchen. So I didn't. I opened notes and wrote 3 lines only I'd see. What happened, what I felt, what I choose next. Then I locked the screen. Choosing silence wasn't about punishment. It was about removing the stage where this argument kept performing. I grabbed a black coffee, sat in the truck, and let the caffeine draw clean lines around my thoughts. The climax arrived quietly. I deleted a draft reply mid-sentence. If the truth required me to plead, it wasn't my truth. The phone buzzed again. I let it sing to itself. Driving again, I let history play without commentary. When trust breaks, it's rarely a lightning bolt. It's weather. You ignore the forecast, skip the maintenance, and call the rot character. Why would a wife test the vows that sheltered both of us? Maybe she missed a version of herself she believed he could return. Maybe she wanted proof she could still get chosen. Or maybe she mistook novelty for growth, the way people confuse busyness with purpose. I wasn't a perfect husband. I can name my dents. But I showed up. I lifted when things were heavy. I kept us pointed at the same horizon. A trip with an ex isn't logistics, it's language. It says, my wants outrank our promises. Older adults understand how small choices reveal big truths. The climax was a sentence I finally admitted aloud. This wasn't about romance. It was about respect. And once respect is traded for convenience, the price gets charged to both. I thought about the men I know, neighbors, uncles, guys from the shop, who've stayed or left. The common thread wasn't romance, it was regard. In this country, we're told men fear commitment. That's not it. We fear disrespect dressed like modern wisdom. We'll fight through layoffs and illness, but we won't thrive where we're minimized. Love talks loud. Respect keeps the lights on. Ask any man who's carried a mortgage and a promise at the same time which one feels heavier to drop. It's the promise, because it's the structure. Without it, love is furniture in a house without framing. Looks good on move-in day, collapses in the first storm. The climax of that minute was me naming what I needed without apology. Not guarantees, not surveillance, just a partner who protects what we built like it's hers too. That standard isn't macho, it's mutual. Meet it, and I'm all in. Dodge it, and you're asking me to disappear for good. I used to think the sharpest tool I had was a good argument. Turns out it was the off switch. Silence isn't absence, it's a filter. It strains out the bait and leaves you with what's real. By not replying, I learned what the messages wanted from me. A performance, a foil, a familiar dance. When I didn't show up, the script fell apart. Older folks know this from parenting and management. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. My silence taught me first. It showed me the parts of me that loved preventing discomfort more than protecting respect. That was a hard mirror. I didn't smash it. I looked. The climax was a simple rule I set for myself going forward. If an answer will be twisted, let actions speak. If a boundary will be mocked, make it visible. If a promise gets redefined midstream, step out of the river. Quiet, then clarity, then motion. Today. By midday, the tone shifted again. Her texts turned practical, then panicked. Rent, pets, who gets the sedan, could we pause everything until after her trip? Control was melting. I answered one message with a single line about the dog and the spare key location. That was it. I made 2 calls of my own, one to a lawyer friend to schedule a consult, one to my boss to take a personal day. Reclaiming your life isn't cinematic. It's small papers, short calls, ordinary courage. I stopped by the bank, updated a contact, and grabbed a new notebook. Fresh pages help. The climax came when I wrote my name on the inside cover and liked my handwriting. It looked steady again. I wasn't punishing Jessica. I was protecting the man who had carried our life without complaint. She had gambled my dignity on a weekend trip. I folded the bet, gathered my chips, and left the table standing taller than before. The highway opened, and Houston's skyline thinned behind heat shimmer. I let the cruise settle a few notches under the limit and watched the fields widen. Sun on metal roofs, a hawk circling, a pickup hauling lumber like purpose you can see. My thoughts unclenched in increments, the way a stiff back loosens mile by mile. I wasn't celebrating, I was breathing. I pictured calling my brother, maybe meeting at a diner off the interstate where the coffee is strong and the eggs are always a little overdone. Men our age trade more stories than advice anyway. The phone stayed quiet because I kept it that way. The climax was a simple moment at a rest stop. I washed my face, looked in the mirror, and recognized the man looking back. Not a victim, not a saint, a grown adult who set a boundary and kept it. I bought a bottled water, stretched my legs, and chose the next exit. I drove toward a motel outside a town with one stoplight and a feed store. Nothing fancy, just a bed and a door that locked. I'd call family after I checked in. I'd make 2 lists. What needs doing today? What can wait until Monday? Older adults know the comfort of lists. They turn panic into sequence. I thought about storage boxes, forwarding mail, finding a temporary place that doesn't feel like limbo. I thought about counseling, not as repair, as recovery. And I thought about the kind of man I want to be on the far side of this. Steadier, simpler, clear. The climax of the minute came when I pictured my first morning alone. Coffee, a short walk, a prayer I could say without bargaining. Then I smiled, not at loss, but at the chance to be consistent again. Tomorrow wasn't a threat anymore. It was a chapter. And for the first time in months, I wanted to read it. Here's what I learned, and it's simple enough to keep. The loudest power isn't rage, it's resolve. When I chose to walk away, I didn't lose a wife. I recovered a man I could respect in the mirror. Calm didn't mean I felt nothing. It meant I felt enough to protect what matters. Respect first, then love. Otherwise, the house looks pretty while the beams rot. I won't apologize for drawing a line I can live behind. If you've been where I stood, in a kitchen where the air goes thin and the past walks in wearing a new excuse, hear this. You are allowed to keep your peace. You're allowed to say less and do more. That's my takeaway, and it fits in 2 words that closed a chapter without breaking the book. Don't worry, I'm done. Now tell me, if this were your life, would you stay and fight for it or leave with quiet dignity? Choose and tell me why.